Coverage of China's space mission. I'm Li Qiuyuan coming to you live in Beijing. Today, China will send the second batch of cargo to its Tiangong space station. A Long March rocket will soon launch the Tianzhou-3 cargo spaceship from the Wenchang spacecraft launch site in the southern province of Hainan. Now, the ship will provide the space station with necessary propellant and supplies to support upcoming crewed missions. Now, Tianzhou-3 is the fourth of the 11 missions scheduled to complete the construction of Tiangong by 2022. And here in the studio, we have Mr. Yang Yuguang of the China Aerospace Science and Industry Corporation with me. He will be watching the launch with us and give us his analysis throughout the way. Thank you very much. And final preparations are now underway for the Tianzhou-3 cargo ship, which is now standing by at the launch site. Tianzhou-3 is expected to dock with the Tianhe core module and deliver around 6 tons of supplies to China's space station. Its previous cargo spacecraft, Tianzhou-2, has disconnected from the back port of the core module and moved to the front port to make room to receive Tianzhou-3. And for the very latest on this, our correspondent Zheng Yibing is now joining us live at the Wenchang spacecraft launch site with more. Great to see you there, Yibing. Now the launch is counting down to the final stages. How are preparations going there?
Well, yes, true. And now the inside and outside the Wenchang space launch site, there is a huge excitement. And everybody's waiting, like here, the platform on the control center, where people are gathering, hoping to have the great view of the whole launch site. And outside the launch site, there are said to be many people waiting on the beach, neighboring area, waiting to witness that exciting moment and history. Now the time is ticking, and the launch pad is open, and we can see the combination of the Long March 7 Y4 carrier rocket and the Tianzhou-3 cargo spacecraft for the first time. They have undergone a complete and systematic check in the past week, either in the assembly complex next to us or in the launch pad some 3 kilometers away in the distance. And this morning, the carrier rocket has completed propellant filling. China Manned Space Engineering Office announced finally they will launch Tianzhou-3 at about 3 p.m. today or later time. Now, the whole system of China National Space Administration across the country is working together for that moment. This is another big step for China to establish the big space station and provide a solution, an invitation to the whole world for the common efforts for the space application and exploration. And today's weather in Wenchang is good, except at the current time, the ground wind speed has a little increased from about 1.7 meters per second to 2 meters per second. And the sky becomes a little bit cloudier. But in general, the working staff at the launch site said this is an optimistic condition for the liftoff. And a brand new Long March 7 Y4 has modifications on the humid weather in Wenchang. And Tianzhou-3 will carry 6 metric tons of cargo and deliver them to the China space station for the next manned mission. Materials and fuel carried by it will support Tiangong's operation and supply the astronauts on the upcoming Shenzhou-13 mission. Together, with a manned mission behind it, the Tianzhou-3 cargo craft launch marks another big step for China's space station in low Earth orbit, set to be complete by the 2022. Now let's wait and see for that lift-off moment. Back to you, Tuyuan.
All right, thanks so much for the very latest. That's Zheng Yibing joining us live at the launch pad there. Now, the Tianzhou-3 cargo spacecraft will be sent into orbit on a Long March 7 Y4 carrier rocket. China's space program uses the Long March 7 to launch cargo spacecraft. Cargo on board the Tianzhou-3 includes daily necessities as well as operational and maintenance equipment. It made its maiden flight in 2016. And Chinese space authorities say both the carrier rocket and the cargo ship are ready to be launched. Have a listen.
We've optimized the rendezvous and docking system to reduce the weight of the platform and meet the requirements for fast and autonomous docking. The Tianzhou-3 cargo ship has undergone a comprehensive test, including a vertical stage check in the launching area, pre-launch loading, and other preparations. The vehicle is in good condition and ready for launch.
Based on the previous cargo mission, we've made improvements to the rocket to enhance its robustness. On the other hand, we've also optimized the pre-launch plan as well as judgment and reading of the signals. So far, all the functional checks have been completed. The rocket has met the conditions to be launched.
We're now joined in the studio by Professor Yang Yuguan from the China Aerospace Science and Industry Cooperation. Great to have you with us as always, Professor Yang. So tell us about what can we expect today. How long is the whole process, for the Tianzhou-3 to fly to the core module of the Tiangong space station? That process, which stages are the most crucial?
Well, you know that Long March 7 belongs to the new generation of China's launch vehicle family because it uses liquid oxygen and also kerosene as its propellant. So Long March 7 is a mid-sized launch vehicle which will play a leading role in the future China's launch market and also China's launch services because you know that its capability to the low Earth orbit is about 14 tons. But it also has a capability to the synchronous orbit, typically 5.5 tons. And for this Tianzhou mission, because you know that the Tianzhou has a mass about 13.5 tons, so it has a capability to launch the Tianzhou cargo ship to orbit with an inclination about 41 to 42 degrees, and also with perigee about 200 kilometers, with apogee about 400 kilometers to this orbit. And also you asked about the procedure. So the procedure, first, it will lift off and then pitch over to the direction, generally speaking, southeast, and then fly for several seconds, about usually 3 minutes, will be the separation of the 4 boosters, and then will be the separation of the first stage. So before that, what you ask is the most critical part, because usually during the speed, very similar to the speed of sound, we call that the transonic flight. Transonic flight, at this moment, the flow field with the most complicated phases and also the vibration will be very intensive. So at this stage will be a very dangerous part. But after that also the separation itself is very critical. And then after that will be the separation of the first stage. Then the 2 payload fairings with the diameter about 4.2 meters will then be jettisoned because it is already outside the atmosphere, do not need the payload fairings any longer. So the second stage has 4 smaller rocket engines called YF-115. So that will work longer, and then when it comes into the orbit, will shut down, and then will be the separation between the launch vehicle and our Tianzhou cargo ship. So the whole procedure takes about 10 minutes, and as I mentioned, the most critical part is during the flight of the first stage and the booster phase. You know that's because Tianzhou and the Long March 7 combination has already stayed in the launch pad for several days, so we already have a very comprehensive examination. And also, you know that the Long March 7 use what we call the so-called the new triple vertical transfer mode. So it will be assembled vertically and transferred to the launch pad vertically and launched vertically. And also comparing with the Long March 2F, the moving platform also has a service tower. So the connection has been connected during it is in the vehicle assembly building, but also it will not be changed when it's transferred to the launch pad. So this brings very great conveniency for our ground staff to simplify the launch procedure, and it is possible for it to launch in a very short period. You know that the Long March 7 launch vehicle use the liquid oxygen. You already see as Mr. Zheng Yibing is reporting, so you can see that the white fog coming release from the different stages. So
right.
That is the vaporized liquid oxygen. It cannot be stored for a very long period. So this fast fast checking is very important for us.
Stay with me, Professor Yang. Now, Tianzhou-3 is on the launch pad, ready for liftoff, and let's now take a look at how it got there. Now, Tianzhou-3 is part of China's efforts to complete the building of its Tiangong space station, and the deadline is the end of 2022. Gao Yiming looks at what can we expect.
The building of the Tiangong space station is a lengthy and difficult process. Altogether, it involves 11 different journeys into space, 4 crewed flights, 4 cargo flights, and 3 to set up the actual parts of the space station. A logistical monster, but a good start is half the battle, they say, and China has certainly managed that. It all began in late April when the most important section of the space station, the core module known as Tianhe, was launched from Wenchang space launch site. Tianhe will serve as the living quarters for crew members and will provide the space station's power and propulsion. It'll be joined later by 2 further capsules where the astronauts will carry out their experiments. The capsules named Wentian and Mengtian will attach themselves to either side of the core module, making a T shape. Exactly 1 month after Tianhe's launch, Wenchang was a hive of activity once again. It was time for the first shipment of cargo on board the Tianzhou-2 spacecraft to be launched. With nearly 7 tons of cargo, it marked the debut for China's space station cargo transportation system. It included propellant and supplies to support human life in the space station. The third journey was a real landmark occasion, which saw the arrival of the first people on Tiangong. It involved 3 Chinese astronauts who stayed there for 3 months. We will have to wait until October for the next episode in this remarkable mission, when a second crew will arrive at the space station. 2022 promises to bring even more excitement and construction, with Tiangong gradually taking its distinctive T shape. Gao Yiming, CGTN.
You're now watching our special coverage of the Tianzhou-3 mission. This is our second cargo resupply mission to the Tiangong space station, and we're standing by for that launch. We're scheduled to happen in about half an hour's time. So let me now bring in Professor Yang Yuguang for more on this. And earlier you mentioned about, the features of the Long March 7 rocket. It is very different from the Long March 5B rocket, which launched the Tianhe core module. And it's also different from the Long March 2F rocket for the manned mission, right? Tell us more about it.
Exactly. So actually speaking, usually we can also recognize the Long March 7 as a derivative of the Long March 2F series, because you know that originally we want to replace the engines of the Long March 2F. You know that the Long March 2F use the UDMH, or unsymmetrical dimethyl hydrazine, as a fuel, and use the NTO, or the nitrogen tetroxide, as the oxidizer. So this combination is highly toxic and highly corrosive. So it's not very environmental friendly, and also the performance of the propellants is not as good as the liquid oxygen and the kerosene. So if the engines can be replaced, the performance can be better, and also the capability can be greater. But finally, we use a different name as Long March 7. So what you mentioned, Long March 5, including Long March 5B. So the Long March 5 families now have 2 members, and the Long March 7 and Long March 6 and 8. All these belong to the new generation launch vehicle, which use the environmental friendly propellant.
All right, we're getting some picture from the Wenchang spacecraft launch center. There you have a perfect view of the rocket, the Long March 7 carrier launch vehicle we are talking about. So on top of that rocket is that Tianzhou-3 cargo spacecraft, now is enclosed in that large fairing, right?
Exactly. So you can see that the rotational platform has already been opened, but still you can see that there are some small arms, which means that the cables and also some pipes are still connected to the launch vehicle. Because you know that, as we have already mentioned, the white smoke, you can see that there are at least on the top of the second stage, there are white forks, and also on the top of the 4 boosters. And the first stage, there are also, because all these stages have the liquid oxygen. And we need to refill some oxygen, because during this the launching process, it will continuously evaporized. So we need some additional oxygen to that. Only maybe several minutes before the launch, we can detach the pipes.
There you are getting a picture of the control room. And earlier we saw, that was beautiful weather there at the Wenchang Satellite Launch Center. And I suppose that's an ideal weather for a rocket launch, is it?
Exactly. You see that's because the latitude of the Wenchang Launch Center is only about 19 or 20 to 20 degrees. So it's more close to the equator. And with this position, we can save a lot of energy. Either for the launch vehicle and also for the satellites. So it's an ideal place, theoretically speaking, on the equator, it will be the most ideal one. But you know that our territory do not cover the equator. So the Wenchang is the best place for us to launch, especially the low inclination orbit.
Right. And earlier
objects.
we just heard that test procedure there, a mock countdown. They are testing out the launch procedure. That's why we heard the countdown there. There you see, again, the coastal launch pad. Why is this launch pad being chosen? I mean, China has several launch centers, right? One is in the Gobi Desert. That's for launching the Shenzhou manned mission.
Yes.
And this one, I suppose, is particularly for launching cargo missions. Is that right?
Not only cargo mission. You see that we've already seen that the Chang'e 5, the lunar probe, and also our Tianzhou-3 Mars probe were also launched in this launch site. Because all these are deep space missions. Usually we launch these kind of missions on a very low latitude position. So the Wenchang and together with Xichang are the right places for China to launch this kind of payload and perform these kind of missions. And also you see the other important factor is that because you know that the Wenchang satellite spacecraft launch site is very close to the seashore, and there is a seaport called the Qinglan seaport. So it is possible for us to transport our launch vehicles from Tianjin to Qinglan and then to this launch site. So because with ships, we do not have a limitation to the diameter of the launch vehicles. That is the reason that we can only launch our Long March 5 families in this Wenchang spacecraft launch site. Because in other launch centers, the diameter of the rocket is limited by the railway tunnels.
We're just momentarily from the launch of Tianzhou-3 mission. We're standing by for that launch. You're having a look at the pictures coming from the Wenchang spacecraft launch center. There you see the Long March 7 carrier rocket. Atop of that rocket is our Tianzhou-3 cargo spacecraft. Some of the upgrades have been made to the Long March rocket, as mentioned by the chief designer of the rocket. What are they? Tell us about them.
Well, actually speaking, you may still remember during the launch of the Tianzhou-2 or the Long March 7 Y3 mission, we just delayed that launch because we met some problem of the rocket boosters. So we need some improvement and check if our improvements is okay. So we, as the designer has mentioned, we just enhance the robustness of the launch vehicle. So this time, I believe it can perform better than before. You know that for any launch vehicle, there always, for any efforts you done, you cannot be sure a 100% success rate. So it is also possible for any kind of failures. So we must have these kind of measures to enhance its reliability and enhance its robustness.
All right. And talk to us about the launch window, right? There's a small modification to launch windows this time from a zero launch window to a narrow launch window. Is that right?
Very professional. You see that the basic requirement to a launch to a space station is to that when it comes into its orbit, it must in the same orbital plane as your target. So during the missions before, since the Shenzhou 8 mission in 2011, we have to use the zero launch window technology. It means that the launch time, the accuracy of the liftoff time will be better than 1 second. So that raises a very strict requirement to the whole system, not only the launch vehicle. But this time, because we have improved the guidance law or the control method, so we can change from the zero launch window to a narrow launch window. Generally speaking, the launch window can last not only 1 second, but for several minutes. Maybe 1.5 minutes. So this has greatly reduced the burdens of other systems, but raise a higher requirement to the launch vehicle itself and also the control system. So if the best launch window is missed, you still have the chance But after that, you have to launch another time, maybe tomorrow.
Right. And, just in July this year, American billionaire Jeff Bezos sent himself up to space using a reusable rocket. But this rocket right here is not reusable. But I understand that China has been testing reusable rocket, right? How's that coming along?
Quite right. You may remember that just maybe last year or at the early of the year, we just have the maiden flight of the Long March 8 launch vehicle. Long March 8 also can be recognized as a derivative of the Long March 7 because it uses 2 boosters rather than the 4 booster used by the Long March 7. But the second stage of the Long March 8 is different from the Long March 7. It uses the third stage of the Long March 3A as the second stage of the Long March 8, so a little bit complex.
Wow.
But although the first maiden flight has not been reused, but we plan to recover the first stage and the boosters of Long March 8. But still, to achieve this, we still have to facing and solving some challenges and also so many key technologies.
命名啊，基本上就是前面是火箭的名称，后面是带了一个爻字，还有一个数字。首先，国家名称就
Founder of Virgin Galactic, he completed a space travel himself aboard the spaceship they developed. Now, that has generated a lot of interest around the world. I mean, in China, is commercial space travel something that we could see in the future, maybe?
Technically speaking, it is right possible because people already master these kind of technologies. But whether a commercial company or a private company can provide this kind of service, we still need the policies from the government. So I hope that this can be achieved. And moreover, what you mentioned, Blue Origin and the Virgin Galactic have done is the suborbital launch space tourism. So it's much cheaper than the orbital space tourism, like the Inspiration 4 have done just 2 days before. So this kind of suborbital space tourism brings us chance for the common people to go into outer space.
Sorry to interrupt. We just heard the count out there. That's 15 minutes out. That's the announcement there. That's the call out. T-minus 15 minutes. Once again, if you are just joining us, you're now watching our special coverage of the Tianzhou-3 mission, the second cargo resupply mission to the new Tiangong space station, currently under construction in low Earth orbit. And this mission will mark the 4th of 11 launches needed for the construction phase of the China space station. Oh, there you see the countdown clock. So that was 16 minutes before the launch. So it's T-minus 16 minutes, 48 seconds. As a split screen you are seeing there on your left is the Long March 7 carrier rocket. On top of that is the Tianzhou-3 spacecraft. On your right, you see the countdown clock, and you're getting a look at the control center. People are there, a series of command are running out there in the comm system. They're testing out, they're doing their final preparations. Also talk to us about the Tianzhou mission, Professor Yang. Tianzhou-3 is the 4th of the 11 missions designed to build China's 3-module space station, which is called Tiangong or Heavenly Palace. You know what? A series of command is being called out there.
等待火箭发射。所以，只要我们能够看到这个白色的气体，就知道现在这个液氧的这个燃料的补加还在进行，对吧？
对。液氧补加完成以后，这个排气口会被封闭。
Tianzhou-2 to our Tianhe 1 core module. But you know that's the lifespan of our Feitian second generation Feitian spacesuit is about 15 times. So we need some replacement. This time we will bring new spacesuits to our Tiangong space station. And also we have the instruments for scientific research and some spare parts of the instruments and also with the spacesuits as well. Also, there are other part of these supplies is the propellant. You see that the Tianzhou or the cargo ships use the same types of propellant. Okay, 15 minutes
there you
counting.
See, that's the call out. That's T-minus 15.
So you see that, as we've seen from the previous video, the commander of the launch site just received report from different systems. For instance, the ground tracking stations, and also the launch pad, and also that other system. Only when all these systems are okay, the procedure can go on.
Yeah, we're hearing words that the ground staff are now pulling back from the launch pad, signaling that the launch is a go. It's entering the final stages there.
You can also see from this screen that all the rotation platform has been turned and withdrawn to its end position. And still, there are several rotational arms still connected close to the vehicle and with the cables connected to the launch vehicle.
Right.
At this moment, the power supply is from the ground. And also, there are pipelines to provide the liquid oxygen. Only several minutes before the launch, the power supply will turn from the ground to the batteries on board the launch vehicle. And then we'll detach the connections, we'll detach the plug-ins from the vehicle, and then the rotation arms will turn back.
Right.
So at this moment, the launch goes on.
That will happen right before the launch, right? Probably
Exactly.
within 1 minute or so. And I was hearing words from my producer telling me that this will be an automatic launch. Is that right? So it's a robotic launch. It will not be
Quite
pressed by
You don't need
any
to
human.
press the button. Because all this will be followed by the program, by the computers. So this can increase the accuracy of the launch time.
All right.
Actually speaking, China uses a different system comparing with other countries. So the zero, the count to zero, the zero moment is the moment that we ignite our rocket engines. While for other countries, this zero is time of liftoff. So you can always hear from the commander and also his colleagues that after the vehicle lift off, they will report the actual lift off time, because zero means to the moment we ignite the engines, not lift off. So it's quite different from other countries.
Right, quite different. So no buttons will be pressed this time during
Exactly.
launch. And you were talking about payloads, and Tianzhou-3 spacecraft will be carrying into space 6 tons of mission payloads and supply. That's a lot. And how to pack all those cargoes in the most efficient way in terms of saving space can be quite a challenge.
Exactly, and also that for some certain payloads, some special payload, we can only bring that to the cargo ship maybe several hours before the launch, because
Why?
that, for instance, in the future we want to perform scientific study. Maybe we want to have some animals to the space station,
Right.
some mouse, maybe some insects, for instance. Because these living things, we must keep living condition for them. So only several hours before the launch, we can put that into the cargo ship. So this is very special. And also maybe some samples need the very cold temperature. So also there are some special requirements of this kind of cargo for scientific research. But that the Tianzhou spaceship, comparing with cargo ships of other countries, have the highest efficiency. We can have more than half of the mass, of the total mass, are cargoes. So this, although maybe it cannot bring cargoes back to the Earth, but for uploading cargoes to the station, it has the highest efficiency.
Do we have any live plants, live animals on Tianzhou-3 this time? No,
Not
right?
formally announced this time, but in the future, I believe we do have
There will
this kind of experiment. In fact, that the UNUSA, United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, and has cooperated with China Manned Space Agency to have joint experiments between Chinese scientists and scientists from other countries. So during these kind of joint experiments, especially those space medicine and space biological experiments, it is possible for these kind of things happen.
Those astronauts on board the Tianzhou-3 mission, which will be launched presumably in October, they are going to spend the Spring Festival up there on the space station. So it's been reported that the staffs have packed dumplings and lanterns for them too, for them to spend the holiday up there.
I wonder, maybe this also happen. And also, I believe there are mooncakes on board.
Mooncakes.
Maybe on board this spaceship.
There's the T-minus 10 minutes. T-minus 10. Where you heard the call out there, T-minus 10 minutes. Previously for a short mission, the water and oxygen that those astronauts needed to sustain their lives can be brought up there, but for a long duration stay, such as Tianzhou-13, they probably will have to rely on regenerative life support. Is that right?
you may notice that during when Mr. Nie Haisheng opened the hatch and came into the Tianhe 1,9, the ground control, the commander just sent a command. Please switch on the water, the oxygen generator. We use electricity and you use water to produce the oxygen, because you know that's in the former missions usually we use oxygen tanks to provide the oxygen for the astronaut. But the oxygen is very difficult to be stored. The water is easier. So we just not bring so many oxygen tanks to the station, but just brings water there. And with the electricity, we can produce oxygen and hydrogen. So the oxygen can be breathed by the astronauts, and the hydrogen can be used to generate oxygen from the carbon dioxide.
Right, and you know, as we are launching Tianzhou-3 cargo spacecraft into space, what happens to the Tianzhou-2 cargo ship? It's still docked with Tianhe now, but what happens next?
Well, you know that just after the Shenzhou-12 crew left the station, originally just before they left, the Tianzhou-2 cargo ship is docked to the rear docking port of the station. Right. So after the Shenzhou-12 crew left, the front docking port is free. So the Tianzhou-2 detached from the station and then fly to the front docking port and then docked automatically to the front docking port. This is to for some very critical steps for the future missions. You know that we can have the refueling capabilities for our station. And the refueling can be done from the front and also can be done from the rear docking port. So the refueling test from both docking ports can raise the reliability and the redundancy of the whole station. It is very important. The more important thing is that, you know that as you have already mentioned, our T-shaped station has two other experimental modules. Which will first dock to the station from the front docking port and then transposition to the side berthing port. Right. But before that, we must test the technologies to using the robotic arm to aid the transposition of the modules. But this time, the Tianzhou-2 will simulate the experimental modules, and we will use the robotic arm to turn this Tianzhou-2 from the front docking port to the side berthing port. So this is to also make sure that in the future we can be 100% success for the construction.
And just how different is this cargo mission compared with that of the Tianzhou-2 mission? I mean, longer duration for sure, so more supplies, but what else?
Exactly. As we have already discussed, we must have the resupplies for 6 months. Almost double of those brought by the Tianzhou-2 mission. So this time, because you know that 6 months is quite a long period, and also as you mentioned, they will enjoy the New Year there, and also the Lunar New Year there. So they must have this kind of, as you mentioned, maybe yes, exactly, maybe dumpling and other things.
Lanterns.
But also the water is very critical.
Right.
As you mentioned, we use the water recovery system to regenerate and reuse the water. And so we don't need to bring so much oxygen and water to the station. So this is very critical,
That's
not only for this mission.
T-6. Continue.
Exactly. So at this moment, most of the subsystems of the launch vehicle is tested, and we, you know, usually during the whole counting down procedure, we test many subsystems of the launch vehicle, especially the GNC or the guidance, navigation and control system, and also the telemetry and the communication system, and also we must monitoring very strictly the parameters and the status of the propulsion system. This is also very important. Either the rocket engines and also the fuel tanks. Very, very important. Because this cryogenic propulsion system, although it has a very high performance, but also it is very difficult to master. The engines used we use the 4 YF100 engines on the first stage on the core, and also we use another 4 rocket engines on the boosters. So the liftoff thrust is higher than 720 tons. Okay, T-minus 5 minutes and counting.
Right, the final 5 minutes there. And after it's being launched into orbit, it's expected to complete automatic dock and rendezvous with the Tiangong space station.
Yes, we will use again, the fast and autonomous rendezvous and docking maybe takes 6 to 8 hours. Just it will be happened today.
Beijing time today,
Yes, exactly. So the fast rendezvous and docking, you know that we haven't practiced this many times before. During the during the Tianzhou-3 and the Tiangong-2 mission, we just tested this technology partially. And also we practiced this fast rendezvous during the Tianzhou-2 and the Shenzhou-12 mission. So this time will be the third one, complete one. And we can master this technology after many times of rendezvous and docking, just more practice.
And tell us more about, the missions to build the space station. How many manned missions? How many are cargo missions? Any important milestones we should be looking out for?
Well, you know that after the construction of the station, we will have the turnover of each expedition will be 6 months. So every year we need to have at least 2 launch of the Shenzhou crewed missions.
And why 6 months? Is that a standard duration from now on?
Because that's the balance between efficiency and the feelings of convenience of the astronauts. For a longer time, that it will be a little bit, maybe they will have homesick. And also
there you see that monitor showing you all the weather conditions there, the humidity, the temperature, 32 degrees Celsius, wind speed, right, and visibility.
It looks very ideal, although there are clouds, but it's very ideal. The weather is fine for the launch.
All right, that's good to hear. That's a relief. All right, it's T-minus 3 minutes to launch. An exciting moment. That's the call out there.
So because that it's a very flat place, and even outside the launch site, the fences can watch the launch, the liftoff of the launch vehicle. So there are so many people. I heard that there are more than 40,000 audience.
Wow. I really wish I could be there though. But as you can hear, it's quieter than before, because we're getting close to time zero. Not so much comm going on, unlike what we heard before, except for a few simple commands and final countdown. That's because the final status check by now has all been completed. So that's a good sign. You don't want to hear too much noises at this time.
You know that the launch procedure can also be improved and optimized for every time. That's as you mentioned.
I suppose they're quite familiar with the drill, but will this still be a nerve-wracking moment for them?
Exactly, as I mentioned, no one can ensure a 100% for any flight missions. There are still uncertainties. So and also the reliability cannot reach 100%.
马上要进入发射状态了。
1分钟准备，1分钟准备。
好，倒计时1分钟。
明白。50秒，50秒。明白。40秒，40秒。明白。30秒，30秒。20秒，20秒。10秒。9、8、7、6、5、4、3、2、1，点火，点火。 昌光学雷达跟踪正常，遥测向正常，文昌飞行正常。110跟踪正常。文昌光学雷达跟踪正常，遥测向正常，文昌飞行正常。阵地1112跟踪正常。阵地3115跟踪正常。文昌光学雷达跟踪正常，遥测向正常，文昌飞行正常。铜鼓岭遥测向正常。3117跟踪正常。文昌光学雷达跟踪正常，遥测向正常，文昌飞行正常。阵地1112跟踪正常。助力器关机，助力器分离。一级关机，一级分离。西沙313跟踪正常。抛整流罩。文昌光学雷达跟踪正常，遥测向正常，文昌飞行正常。317跟踪正常。西沙424跟踪正常。
到目前为止，我们看到发射之后呢，火箭各个节点呢都是非常正常的。
文昌雷达跟踪正常，遥测向正常，文昌飞行正常。
包括助推器的分离啊，还有一级火箭的分离、整流罩、抛整流罩，到目前呢都是非常准确的完成。那么接下来呢，最关键的可能就是船舰分离。
对， 船舰分离是最关键的一个步骤。像长征7号打这种任务呢，它的轨道有一个特点，就是说它只有到了，因为我们全程可能是600秒左右，它只有到了最后几秒钟才会建立轨道。所以呢，我们一般看这个任务的时候，都是要关注到它最后的几秒钟，因为在前面一旦有闪失的话，那么有效载荷还是会再入，它建立不了轨道，这是它这种弹道任务的一个特点，所以最后这一段也是很关键的。
决定最后能不能精确入轨是吧？
对，就是说，我要进入一个轨道的话呢，我必须要把火箭加速到一个环绕速度。
对，
这个速度如果达不到的话，火箭依然会落回地球，这个依然是失败的。
对，
那么达到环绕速度，只有在最后的这600秒里边的最后几秒钟，才能够建立。
所以你们最关心的就是
文昌雷达
对
接下来入轨前最后的阶段。
是
317跟踪正常。
但如果船舰分离正常的话，那应该就意味着我们入轨应该没有问题。
对，从现在的速度位置和火箭的状态来看，只要能够按照我们的弹道程序走完最后的，那么我相信入轨精度应该是会非常好的。
73424跟踪正常。
现在呢，1、2级火箭已经分离，相当于是2级火箭呢，现在带着天舟3号飞船在继续飞行当中，向着入轨的轨道飞去。
文昌雷达跟踪正常，遥测信号正常，文昌飞行正常。
这个看火箭的这个发射任务还是很激动，也很紧张。
是，
因为这几年这个载人航天的任务比较密集，就感觉就像一个接力棒一样。
对，
就是每一棒都很重要，都需要完成的非常完美才行。
文昌雷达跟踪正常，遥测信号正常，文昌飞行正常。
整流罩抛掉以后，其实呢，现在应该是能够完整的看到天舟3号飞船的全貌的。
2级固定发动机关机。2级摆动发动机关机。
好了。
船舰分离。
哦，这个，我们经常说，火箭专家可能就在等这一刻，对吧？船舰分离，如果之前的程序都一切正常的话，那么意味着我们的天舟3号飞船呢就可以按照既定的程序进入轨道了。
3, 2, 1。
经常说这个时候呢，可能火箭专家能 长舒一口气，又一次圆满完成任务。
也确实就是也没有想到，自己在后面看火箭发射，确实感觉比在现场还是要紧张一点。
您不是第一次的演播室吧？
直播还真是第一次。
直播是第一次。
对，
那这个感觉和你们在现场看到的这个感觉有什么不一样？
就是双重紧张。双重紧张。
但是这个时候，作为火箭系统，应该每次都能够，是不是有一种大石头落了地的感觉？
对，至少目前是。至少大家这个喜悦的心情能够持续一天。到明天新的工作开始以前，还是可以好好的休息一下。
我觉得每次好像火箭专家你们说的话都差不多。真的。
对，可能感受差不多。
这个兴奋持续一段时间，很快下一个任务又来了。
对，
确实我们现在这个航天任务就像接力棒一样，真的像刚才两位嘉宾所说的。
从刚才船舰分离的状态看，这个姿态的扰动非常非常小，就基本上是就轻轻的把这个货运飞船推出去了。
所以到目前为止，这一系列的程序呢都是非常正常的。所以我们看到，在船舰分离之后呢，那么天舟3号稍后呢看看它的这个入轨情况。还有呢，最重要的一个关键的节点就是看看飞船上的这个太阳能帆板，太阳能帆板的这个展开。如果太阳能帆板正常展开，就意味着有非常圆满的一个发射。好的，太阳能帆板展开。这应该意味着我们这一次的发射取得成功，对吧？
对，
那我们稍后看一看，因为发射中心呢还要指挥控制中心还要确认。
华山，我是文昌。文昌，天舟3号货运飞船出轨根数分离点参数已发出，请上。
Of the sun in the ideal direction to make sure it has sufficient energy.
So next major mission for the Tianzhou-3 spacecraft is to fly toward Tiangong space station and dock and rendezvous with Tianzhou.
Because at this moment, the orbit of the Tianzhou-3 cargo ship is lower than the space station, which means that it can rotate the Earth faster than the station. So it is a chasing vehicle, chase the space station, and finally, maybe after 6 to 8 hours, they can go together.
Oh, wow. So it's chasing the Tiangong space station from the back.
Yes, but they were already in the same orbital plane. So that's a basic requirement. That is why we requires a very strict, either a zero launch window or a narrow launch window.
And how challenging will that dock and rendezvous process?
Well, it's still, that's it's a very complex procedure. Although we've already performed that many times before, but still it is a very challenging and very dangerous part. And also, you know that during the docking process, we use multiple sensors. For instance, the rendezvous and the docking radar, and also the LiDAR, and also optical sensors to make sure that we can measure the relative speed and the relative attitude very precisely to ensure the docking procedure. And we use the APAS, or the androgynous peripheral attach system, or androgynous peripheral assembly system to connect the two vehicles. This follows the international standards. So in the future, it is possible, technically speaking, for other countries to dock with China's space station only with a very slight. It is not formally announced, but during some interview of the staff of our staff, maybe possible to have female astronauts.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's
because
something
you
to
know
look
that
forward
our
to.
current two space girls, Miss Liu Yang and Miss Wang Yaping, like sweet food. So I believe that if they have female astronauts, have our space girls, I believe their cargoes may have some sweet food for them.
Wow. So there will be, there might be a female astronaut, and there will be a mix of veteran astronauts and new astronauts, I suppose?
Exactly. You see that during the Tianzhou-3 mission, we have 2 veterans and 1 newcomer.
Right.
Mr. Ni Haisheng even already had 2 flight missions before. So I believe this also be the similar configuration of the crew this time for the Tianzhou-13. Because still it is very important that during this, what we call the technology demonstration phase.
Right. And you mentioned there will be spacesuits. There are spacesuits in that Tianzhou-3 spacecraft, so they are preparing for EVA spacewalks, right?
Absolutely, because you know that EVA is very, very important, very, very critical for not only the construction, repairing, maintenance of our space station, but also very critical for many, many scientific and engineering research. You know that although we've already been very successful during the 2 EVAs of the Tianzhou-12 mission, but still, you know that we have to catch up with advanced countries in this field, the Russia and the US. They have performed so many EVAs during their flight in the ISS, in the shuttle missions, and in the missions of Mir.
And what would you say would be the most challenging part for that Shenzhou-13 manned mission?
Very interesting. You know that this Tianzhou-3 cargo ship will occupy the front docking port. So there is no choice, but the Shenzhou-13 mission has to dock to the rational docking port, or the docking port facing the Earth. So it's quite different. You know that during the former missions, we only dock from the front or from the back. That's relatively easy, although it is still very tough, but still comparing with docking from the bottom, it is easier. So this time, although you know that just after the Shenzhou-12 is detached from the station, it also demonstrates the technology and procedure to approaching the station from the bottom docking port. So this is a very good preparation for the Shenzhou-13 mission. But this time, really, the Shenzhou-13 mission, the crew will facing this challenge, the docking from the bottom docking port.
Oh, wow. And you mentioned what's on that Tianzhou-3 cargo ship, but how does it compare with, other cargo ships, for example, in other countries?
北京文昌报告，下面请文昌发射场区指挥部邓红琴指挥长宣布发射结果。
Okay, they will
All right, the announcement
result.
is coming up. That's the official announcement that's going to be announced by officials at the launch team.
Yes. So, as you have asked, although our Tianzhou spaceship is not the largest one is the ATV from Europe. Okay, we will announce.
各位专家同志们，根据
Dear experts, dear colleagues, according to the data of the cargo ship and also according to the calculation of the Beijing Space Control Center, Tianzhou-3 cargo spacecraft has entered the orbit accurately. The space cargo is in great conditions. Now I would like to announce the full success of this mission. Here, on behalf of the Wenchang spacecraft launch site, and also the Command Control Center, I would like to extend a sincere gratitude to all the colleagues and all the researchers who have supported this mission. My thanks also go to all those experts behind this mission. And this is the end of today's Wenchang reports, and this is the end of today's launch mission.
All right, there you have it, an official confirmation from the command center. The launch is now a success. Once again, the launch of the Tianzhou-3 cargo ship is a success. How do you make all of this another milestone that we've witnessed together?
Well, this is really a very important step for the what we have already mentioned, the construction phase of our Tiangong space station. Just before the formal construction, we have to have the what we call the technology demonstration phase. During this phase, we will have the Tianzhou-12 and the Tianzhou-13 mission to test all the technologies needed for the construction and for the future operation of our space station. But just before the session, as we already mentioned, the Tianzhou-2 is very important for the Tianzhou-12 mission. Well, this Tianzhou-3 is really important for the Tianzhou-13 because all the necessary resupplies were already in space. So maybe several hours later, it will dock to the station. Now, our future crew of the Tianzhou-13 will have their supplies. They will not worry about their waters, their oxygen, their food, and other things.
All right, Professor Yang, stay with me. Now, Tianzhou cargo ships are the courier that China's manned space mission has come to depend on, as Professor Yang mentioned earlier. And as our Sun Ye reports, there's much more to them than meets the eyes.
Tianzhou cargo ships have been delivering all kinds of supplies to China's space station, from food to clothes, including spacesuits. They are like delivery men on Earth, but space carriers are faster, more efficient, and more reliable. Space engineer Jia Dongyong says Tianzhou cargo ships now hold a world record.
One of the best ways to evaluate a carrier spaceship is the ratio of load to total weight. The more the payload, the better. Now Tianzhou weighs 13.5 tons in total and can carry 6.5 tons of payload. That's a ratio of almost 0.48.
The more a cargo ship carries, the more cost-efficient it is, and the more it can contribute to space exploration.
For example, if Chinese scientists want to do some large-scale experiments, they can deliver the equipment by cargo spacecraft.
And the packing process inside the carrier ship follows tested scientific rules.
Packages are laid out in a way to guarantee balance. Heavier objectives generally go into the section below. We also want them to be easily accessed by astronauts, so, for example, things that will be used first are packed last.
So just like Tianzhou cargo ships are uniform in shape, they're also uniform in being reliable and efficient.
And Tianzhou-3 cargo ship's mission this time would be similar and fine-tuned compared to its predecessors, Tianzhou-2, as space engineers in the mission explained to CGTN's
Tianzhou cargo ships come in similar functions and tasks. Their loads are pre-planned and are fine-tuned for each time. Compared with Tianzhou-2, Tianzhou-3 is carrying different things, for example, fuel propellant. And as Tianzhou-3 is providing for the 3-person crew for a 6-month stay, expected to, for example, consume more food this time. There is one set of spacesuit for spacewalking. They all hold around 6 tons of payload, but the content's different as we are past the first stage now and entering the next stage.
So Professor Yang, talk to us about the major tasks we can expect for Shenzhou-3, Shenzhou-13 mission, I mean.
Well, as we already discussed, the Shenzhou-13 crew will stay in the station for 6 months. You will know that the formal or the ordinary turnover of each expedition team of the future operations phase will be 6 months. So every year we will launch at least 2 Shenzhou spaceships to dock with the station and change the expedition team of the station. But you know that to master or have a very smooth operation, we need to test the technologies necessary for the astronaut to stay in space or residence in space for 6 months. The Shenzhou-12 has made a very good preparation for this phase because you know that although you know that the Shenzhou-11 mission and the Tiangong-2 has achieved the midterm residence in space, but at that moment we only use the non-regenerative life support system. Well, for the Shenzhou-12 crew, we have already tested the efficiency and the correct of the design of our regenerative life support system. But still, the 3 months is quite different from 6 months. So this time, the Tianzhou-3 mission will test whether we can stay properly in the station for 6 months and then go back to the Earth with very healthy condition. So this is very important, also recognized as a good preparation for the future operation. Moreover, you see, as we already also discussed, we must have more EVAs and more complex operations outside the station. Last time, we already mounted not only change the position of the panoramic cameras, but also install some backup pumps for the station. In the future, I believe during the Tianzhou-3 mission, the operation of the EVA will be more challenging and more complex. So we just have more practice in this field. Moreover, you see that during the announcement of the China Manned Space Agency, we will have about 42 biological experiments on board this station during the technology demonstration phase. So 14 has been already performed by the Tianzhou-12 crew. So I believe the others will be performed by the Tianzhou-13 crew because they stay there longer. You may notice that during the residence of the Tianzhou-12, they take their blood samples maybe every several days.
Thank you very much for your insights, Professor Yao, and appreciate your perspectives as always.
Thank
now,
you,
our reporter Sun Ye is standing by at Aerospace Control Center in Beijing. Great to see you there, Sun Ye. What's the latest from where you are?
Hi, Qiuyuan. Here in the Beijing Control Center, we've also heard that piece of good news as you had. Wenchang has announced the success of the liftoff. And here at the Beijing Control Center, there's a huge round of applause too. But of course, right now, Tianzhou-3 cargo ship's mission has only just started even before the in 7 hours' time, it's going to rendezvous and dock with the Tianhe core module, which just saw off China's first long-term crew of taikonauts a few days before. And then the Tianzhou-3, this cargo ship, it's in preparation for the incoming next batch of taikonauts that are scheduled to go there as early as October. And we have a relatively clear time frame today. We know that around at 9 o'clock, which is in 7 hours' time, the rendezvous and docking is going to take place. That's similar to what Tianzhou-2, that cargo ship, did a few months ago. Of course, this is the two Tianzhou-2 and 3 cargo ships. They are of the same batch. They're all going to employ that fast automated docking and rendezvous technology. They're very similar in the process, but space engineers here at the Beijing Control Center have been telling us one of their goals for design is to make that whole process streamlined and serialized. Space engineers here have been telling us that the China Space Station project is a long-term project and it has a relatively frequent launch plans and of course the docking plans. So they were designing to make their whole process standardized and streamlined and all the missions. But that said, Tianzhou-3's mission is still a little bit different from before on the heel of the success of Shenzhou-12 and Tianzhou-2. As space engineers have been telling us, that complete success a few days before means China Space Station's project is going to a new next stage. And Tianzhou-3 cargo ship, it's going to be preparing for the incoming Shenzhou-13 crew, and it's bringing a different amount of payload. That's in preparation for a longer 6-month stay. And that's including food, their necessities, and one set of spacesuit. And as we wait here in the next 7 hours, we could be hearing more from the Tianzhou cargo ship. Qiuyuan.
Certainly looking forward to all of that. Thank you very much. Please do stay in touch. Sun Ye joining us live from Beijing Aerospace City. Now, China's Manned Space Engineering Office has declared the launch of the Tianzhou-3 cargo spacecraft a success. It's taken off from the Wenchang launch site in Hainan province, and the cargo craft will then rendezvous and dock with Tiangong, China's orbiting space station. And let's now take a look at key moments of the Tianzhou-3 cargo spacecraft launch. And that's going to do it for this special coverage on Tianzhou-3's launch. Thank you so much for staying with us. And bye for now.